Greeting everyone. We are from Group 10 and we'll be presenting a topic for Learning Unit 9, Race and Ethnicity, focusing on racial and ethnic discrimination. Now I will explain two academic articles about racial and ethnic discrimination. So, the first article is titled Ethnic Differences and Predators of Racial and Religious Discrimination Among Malaysian, Malays and Chinese by Key. So, it studies how Malay and Chinese in Malaysia experience discrimination. So, the study found that religion, social identity, and how people feel about other groups affect how much discrimination they face. Even within one country, different group can have a different experience. So the second article is trend in racial and ethnic discrimination in hiring in six Western countries by Quillen and Lee. So it looks at hiring discrimination in places like the US and the UK. So the others use meta-analytical techniques, which means they combine a result from many studies to see the bigger picture. So they found that Black and Middle Eastern applicants still face a strong discrimination when applying for a job, and it has not improved much over time. So overall, both articles show that racial and ethnic discrimination is still happening and looks different depending on the place and situation.
Good day everyone. My name is Ansha Kumari. My metric number is 83275. Today I will be presenting two article summaries. First article is by Nur Amali Aminuddin that explores racial and religious discrimination among Malays and Chinese in Malaysia. The study found that Malays reported higher discriminatory attitudes than Chinese, particularly when they asked they would accept neighbors of different race or religion. Around 30% of Malaysians survived said they didn't want neighbors of a different race or religion. Interestingly, the biggest predictor of racial discrimination was not demographic like age or education. It was whether someone also held religiously discriminative views. This suggests a strong link between race and religion in among society. The study used data from the World Value Surveys, which is 1,200 respondents, and relied on established theories like intergroup contact and social identity to interpret the results. The key takeaway is that in Malaysia, race and religions are tightly intertwined, and technically discrimination means addressing both dimensions together. The author calls for more open and data driven discussions on these issues, which remain sensitive and often politically charged. The second article is by Lincoln Cullen and John Lee that examined trends in racial and ethnic discrimination in hiring cis Western countries. The researchers reviewed 90 field experiments involving more than 170,000 job applications. These experiments sent out identical resumes with only names changed to suggest different racial or ethnic backgrounds. What they found was quite striking. In 5 out of the 6 countries, discrimination did not decline over time. France was the only exception showing a decrease, but even there the level remained high. Discrimination was especially severe against Middle Eastern and North African application, and this trend worsened after September 11. In fact, non-white applications need to send 50% more applications than white applications to get the same response. The study concludes that while anti-discrimination laws and corporate diversity policies exist, they haven't been enough to reduce racial biases in hiring. The findings stress the need for systematic changes, not just a surface level of reforms. That's all from me today. Thank you.
There are four aspects of comparative analysis. in these two academic articles. The first one is focus. The Malaysian study by Key et al. Looks at how people perceive discrimination. It used surveys to understand how Malays and Chinese Malaysians feel about living near people of different races or religions. On the other hand, the Western study by Quillian and Lee focused on actual hiring behavior. It examines whether people with ethnic minority names receive fewer job callbacks compared to white applicants. The next the next one is type of discrimination. In Malaysia, discrimination is both racial and religious. For example, Malays are commonly associated with Islam, while Chinese often non-Muslim. In Western countries, the study mainly looks at racial and ethnic discrimination in job hiring. Religion isn't a main focus, although some ethnic groups like Middle Eastern applicants may also face religious bias. The third one is findings. The Malaysian study found that Malays perceive more religious discriminations, while Chinese report more racial discrimination. These views are shaped by political and ethnic identity. In contrast, the Western study shows that hiring discrimination has barely changed over time, even with anti-discrimination law in place. Minority applicants still face lower chances of getting hired. The last comparative analysis is policy context. In Malaysia, affirmative action policies favors Malay, while they aim to correct past inequality. They also cause resentment among other ethnic groups. Meanwhile, countries have legal protection against discrimination, but the study shows that these laws alone are not enough to stop unfair hiring practice.
From both articles, there are a few key questions that can be derived. The first questions: what factors influence perceived or actual discriminations? In Malaysia, political orientations and ethnic identity affect perceptions. Meanwhile, in Western countries, ethnic sounding names or immigrant status may trigger actual hiring bias. So the second questions: how do structural systems contribute to or mitigate discriminations? So Malaysia ethnically targeted policies create perceptions of unequal treatment. Meanwhile, Western anti-discrimination laws have failed to significantly reduce actual bias. So the third questions: what methodological approaches are more effective? The Malaysian Studies Survey approach captures subjective experience. Meanwhile, the Western Study experimental design reveal real-world behavior outcomes. So combining both articles or method may give a fuller pictures. So the last question: how is the concept of race or ethnicity socially constructed? So both articles shows that race and ethnicities are not biologically fixed but socially defined. For instance, the perceived foreigners based on names by Killian and Lee, or politicized ethnic identities by Key et al., also inform experiences of discrimination.
In conclusion, both studies show that racial and ethnic discrimination is a serious issue across the world, but it looks different depending on the local context. In Malaysia, discrimination is often influenced by social identity and religion, especially between the Malay and Chinese communities. In Western countries, the focus is more on hiring discrimination, where bias against Black and Middle Eastern applicants has remained high for decades despite the existence of anti discrimination laws. These findings show that to reduce discrimination, we need both policy change and greater public awareness. From an anthropology and sociology perspective, these issues help us understand how race and ethnicity are shaped by society and how social structure can support or fight against inequality. Ultimately, addressing discrimination requires not only policy change but also a shift in societal attitudes and deeper cultural understanding.